As Canadian citizens, we're used to the politicians giving us the middle finger. I mean, that's pretty normal these days. They promise to do things and then they never do them at all anyway. But now this level of basically, we don't give a rat's ass, has now trickled down to school boards. So even though the Ontario Education Minister, Stephen Lease, and Premier Doug Ford have both said parents should be informed when their children are transitioning genders at school, the province's school boards say, nah, double middle barrel finger, buddy. That doesn't work for us. And we're just going to continue with the policies we like. You know, the ones where we don't inform you parents. To date, not one Ontario school board has adopted a policy to require parental involvement in these sensitive interventions. Julia Malot, a transgender person vocally in favor of parental rights, wrote in an op-ed for the National Post on January 21st. I think that they are still trying to figure out how to move these policies forward in a workable, balanced way, Malot said. They've been working with parents on all sides, trying to understand what does that balance really look like. I'll tell you what that balance looks like, Julia. It's an imbalance in favor of parental rights. What gives these random strangers the right to instill their values, morals, and warped beliefs on other people's children? I'll tell you what, none. Alberta's government made strong policy changes last week to school gender identity policies, including a requirement that parents be informed in all cases when their children are using different pronouns and names at school. It follows similar policy changes in Saskatchewan and New Brunswick last year. However, in Ontario, they've been upholding policies still that prevent parents from being informed at all. School staff training on January 18th of this year for the Hamilton Wentworth District School Board said keeping name and pronoun changes confidential is important, as doing otherwise could put students at risk. The training material, which were published by a former teacher and parental rights advocate, Chanel Paff, reinforced the HWD-SB's controversial gender identity procedure. Student safety is always the priority, and educators must be cautious that they do not inadvertently communicate something to a parent, guardian, caregiver that may out a student and put the student at risk, the procedure says. At risk by whom? Their loving parents? You know, the same folks who've been raising these children forever and know them better than any of you clowns? The Waterloo Regional District School Board trustees recently voted, you'll be happy to hear, to keep sexual books accessible to minors. Now, we're not talking 13, 14-year-old minors, but children that are 4 years older, 4 plus, that's right. And they opposed parental rights during a recent meeting as well. Since when did school become all about? Now, days dedicated to sexual orientation and gender identity celebrations? When did it become about pronoun day and coming out day? Why do we allow third-party organizations access to schools? Organizations whose sole purpose is to propagandize naive, confused children into believing they need medical gender reassignment procedures to finally be happy. Why do we allow books in elementary school libraries like, for example, The Other Boy, this one written by M.G. Hennessy? It's all about a girl who goes by the name Shane taking puberty blockers and planning to get testosterone injections. A little excerpt from the story. It goes like this. What happens if he stops taking the shots? That's reversible too, right? A character in the book asks. A doctor, a very caring doctor, responds, not entirely. Some of the changes will be permanent. The doctor says Shane will have skipped female puberty and likely will not be able to have children naturally. It's cool, Shane replies. Wow, cool. Why are we promoting books that attempt to normalize and downplay the side effects of these types of medical mutilations? In case you had any doubts where government officials stood on the issue, there is a new federally funded guidance document titled Trans-Affirming Education in Schools, an educator toolkit. The toolkit says teachers must go beyond the inclusive approach to gender identity, an example of which is relying on certain events such as Pride Month to discuss the issue. The toolkit says a stronger affirming approach is needed. weaving gender identity into all learning for all grades and all subjects. There you go, folks. So the opting out is a little hard, no? Every single student needs to learn about gender diversity in all areas of the curriculum, inclusive of science and mathematics. That's right, you're not safe in those courses either. And not just in language, arts, and history, the toolkit states. It gives various hypothetical teachers' responses as an example of transphobic resistance to such teaching. I work with really young children. This is not an important issue for this age group is one. That would be a transphobic resistance. I'm not comfortable using these terms in my classroom because I don't think children should be taught about these topics as another. That's right, you ignorant morons. You should be teaching this shit all the time. I mean, after all, they're kindergartners and they're probably doing it already. Of course, if you're a parent who speaks out against this insanity, you will be automatically labeled as hateful, bigoted, ignorant. Just pick your poison. Personally, I'm not too old to remember a time that when a stranger, or even a teacher for that matter, had sexual discussions with young children in school, it was quickly shut down, and the adult in question was brought to bear and asked as to their motivations for having such conversations. Usually it was of a nature of perversion. According to Bruce Pardy, a law professor at Queen's University and executive director of Rights Probe, speaking at a recent summit, he said parental rights essentially don't exist legally. I'm talking legally, I'm not talking morally, he said. For example, he said a 12-year-old could go to a health care practitioner and start receiving gender-affirming medical treatments. Whoa, see, Canada, there's our medical system for you. The law says that if a child is capable of understanding the consequences, capable of consent, the doctor may proceed. The doctor is permitted by law to rely on his or her presumption that the child is capable. I would also say they're biased, no? If that's not actually the case, he or she is not liable. But if that child were to try to purchase alcohol, for example, cigarettes, or even try to cast a vote, then it's a no-go, as they're not old enough to understand the full consequences of such actions. Makes sense. But chopping off their nuts or breasts, that's totally fine. Got it, experts. Thanks. According to David Haskell, an associate professor in the Faculty of Liberal Arts at Wilfrid Laurier University, every court case in the past decade that has pitted LGBT rights against the rights of others has, guess what, sided with the LGBT side. Remind me again just how they're the most hard done by group of all. Seems like it's the rights of those that disagree with the LGBTQ triple plus whatever ideology. Those are the folks without rights, especially in this impartial Canadian court system, correct? Sadly, many parents have lived naively with the belief that schools are there in a complementary role alongside parents in the welfare of their children. That was the case like maybe 20, 40, 50, 60 years ago. But these days, parents, you better wake up. The goal of schools and online culture is to not only market this gender ideology insanity to your children, but more importantly, convince them that you're the enemy while doing it. I do appreciate you watching. Thank you very much. Please post any comments you have in the comment section. You can also follow me on my Rumble and my Locals account. If you haven't yet subscribed to my channels, please do so. And I'm on Twitter at Camera612, and I will see you next time.